texting you yesterday. I mean, I know it's not necessarily part of it, but basically if they get under the hood and investigate that and like it, then I think we've got some pretty massive ins.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah, that'll be releasing next week. So that's a big one.
Okay, amazing. Okay, so going live. Does that mean we are live? I never know. Amazing.
Yes.
Hey, well, yes, exactly. Hey, everyone. Okay, so welcome to this kind of live ecosystem session with Internet of Energy Network guys. From my screen order, we've got Mike, Simon, and Philip Beadle. Hey, everyone.
Hey,
Dave.
David, how you going?
Yeah, good. It's great to see you all, and very, very excited to see what's been going on. So for everyone who's watching, we're going to cover probably three main areas, and then if you do have any questions in the chat or anywhere else, send them through and we can pick them up. We'll probably do about 30-35 minutes. Usually seems to be a good kind of duration. So we're going to cover off the ION or Internet of Energy protocol, where Phil's been working his magic, and you would remember him from a lot of the Build It sessions. So hopefully we're going to get a little bit under the hood there. We're also going to talk about some battery stuff and the stuff that's been ongoing work with a university for the last little while, and an update there, and then anything else that you want to ask. And I think like the first thing that I'll just think in the old preamble, because I know there's a little bit of FUD within the community, some token price and everything else. But yeah, I mean, like some of the things we're going to hear, it's a bit like the Holochain ecosystem. We're used to, in this world, when you're building on the edge, you're used to people not being able to get it, and people are looking for, often it's really nice to see another DEX or looks rare vampire attack or those kind of things, because they're really nice signals that a market is, like, they're in a mature market and people can understand it. But yeah, when we're talking about distributed energy protocols, there's nothing out there. So how would the market really understand what's going on? So for everyone who's excited or worried or whatever else the emotions you're going through, fantastic. But like, really looking forward to digging into the next half an hour or so and seeing some of the amazing things under the hood, because there's a massive demand sitting there for software-defined grids and distributed energy protocols, and so we're just very, very early days in connecting a product and a market.
Good.
All right, so let's ION protocol. Sim, is it over to you or Philip, or like, let me know?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'll probably, I guess, hand over to Phil in a sec, but yeah, I think like in a couple of the other previous AMAs and the rest, we've been sort of building towards the protocol outcome. So we've been working on it for quite a while, and it's a bit of it's been a process that's been going for a long time, actually, even before we launched the project. So the what you mentioned about the university and some of the work we've been doing previously in RedGrid and that sort of stuff has all brought us to this point. And then Phil and a bunch of gurus and we've all been working feverishly to sort of bring it together, and Phil's like, I'll say this because he won't say it when he's going through it, but he's like when he came on board with Mike and I, that just showed him where we got to and where we were at with all the protocol and all the work that had been done, and he's just like challenged our thinking around a lot of things, and just questioned and changed a lot of things, and just got it to a pretty amazing point. So really super excited about that. So but yeah, Phil, I won't steal any more of the thunder. You might want to jump into it, I guess.
I'm not really stealing my thunder, but it's really good to be back. working on a Holochain project again. Took a fair bit of time off last year, which was great to give me a bit of time to reset and basically let Holochain mature a bit. So, and to see RedGrid coming along well, and this whole ION tech coming along, and then very much in the last, since I started a Holochain, I've been like, let's just see where the universe takes me. And this year, I finally got my solar system installed on a new house. And as soon as it was turned on, I was like, I wonder what RedGrid's doing. So I went and had a look at their website, which had been updated that day. And I was like, oh, this is super impressive. So I got in contact with Sim, and within minutes, I'm like, yeah, cool, I'm signed up working for RedGrid now, which was cool. And the first thing we did was go through the transactive energy market project that they'd been working on with a large university. And we had some time to digest what had been done. And I spent some time catching up on all the new stuff with Holochain. So I'm actually going to show you one of the scaffolding tool. I'm not sure if anybody else has shown that on one of these AMAs, but it's super cool. And it's the best way to get started. And especially for me, like lots of the APIs change, there's always lots of changes. So for me to actually just go and scaffold an app and go, oh, cool, that's how we do it now. That's a lot less code than I was doing before. It was really good. And then once I started to understand again what ION was trying to do, and I went through the code again, I was like, should we have a chat about this? So we did. And I put together a sequence diagram of how I see it working for basically for myself, because I've got this solar system and a Tesla Powerwall and all that cool stuff. I was like, how can I build something that works for me? And shall I share screen? Show you?
Yeah, please.
Cool.
Just make sure you're available. Yep.
All right. So the first thing I did was started writing down some scenarios. I'm not going to go through that, but like some scenarios so that I could understand what was going on, and then come up with a simple sequence diagram of, you're a consumer. So you go to our app and you want to get a list of the producers that are in your area, because this is all very local, about being locally produced. So it's basically the first iteration of this is just producers in your postcode, essentially. So you can, and then what you do is you negotiate a supply agreement, same as you would do with the retailer, except this is directly to the producer. Once you got your supply agreements, then there's this whole production cycle. So the producer creates a bill, and then each block of power, so we're doing it in 5 minute blocks now. So the producer creates a 5 minute block of power, it gets consumed by the consumer. And then you create this Holochain entry for the supply block, which we haven't got at the moment, but the idea is that the supply or the consumer will then be able to put in some quality metrics to say, how good was the power, did it, all that kind of stuff. And then you get a bill. And I was like, oh yeah, cool, this is all right. So this made logical sense to me, and I started coding this up. And then I was like, I did an entity relationship diagram as well, so that I could understand how all these things are fitting together. So you got producers and consumers with a supply agreement, and then the producer creates the supply block. It gets charged to the consumer based on the agreement, and then the power is received by the consumer, etc. And then you create this bill. And then I was like, how are we going to pay the bill? We've got these little 5 minute increments of power coming from multiple producers to one consumer to supply power to themselves, right? And I was like, that looks really much like Holofuel, because what I did was I went to the Holo website, copied the Holofuel diagram, and then just changed a few things on it so that, and I didn't, there was no massaging to make this work, right? It just works. Because each of these is a solar producer. Each of your consumers, which can go down to individual devices, because we've got these smart plugs and things like that. Each of these devices is essentially a user in Holo. So Holo, you've got the reserve account, and then you need someone to manage the infrastructure, which is RedGrid. And it was just like, we had this moment of like, oh my God, it's basically exactly the same as the way Holofuel works. Should I go? Do you want me to show you some code now? Or
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, so after I had that revelation, I was like, well, this is going to be really cool. So now we can just build the red grid side of things, and then we can literally work with Holo to implement our own type of currency. So I was like, okay, it's been 12 months since I wrote any Holochain code. What am I going to do? And I found this awesome tool. See that? Literally, you just write this, right? You did nothing installed. You can literally, if you've got npm installed, which every developer has, you can go npm init holochain and press return. There you go. There you go. Yep, let's proceed with that. It pops up a nice UI for you to decide what your app is. Let's call this AMA 1. You can pick your UI front end. I like Vue, so I pick Vue. When you name all your things, you can define your entry definitions, your zones, all this kind of stuff. All this stuff which is quite difficult to do if you're trying to code it yourself, right, and you don't know what you're doing. And you could just fill this out and press scaffold. And it shows you what it's going to create. It creates a UI for you. It's got all your DNA, has all your testing as well. And all this stuff about work directory, about how your DNAs get packaged up into HAPs and things like that. That's all relatively new to me. And go create. And we'll just hit automatic setup and switch back to the terminal. And you can see here, it's using this cool new cacheix thing for Holochain as well. This is literally going to run Nick shell, install the app, and I will end up with an entire application. It looks exactly like this, because this is exactly what I did for ION, right? Yep. So in the zone, you can see these are all the different bits and pieces that I put in here as entry types. So these entry depths. This is your zone name, ledger. It's this bit here. DNA name is the top level thing here, ION microledger. And it creates all the code for you. And it's really nicely done code too. Like your entries are separate from the way that it's handled. So these are all the things like get, create, update, all that kind of thing. And you'll notice that down here, you can set read, update, delete if you want those functions. So on some functions, you don't want that. I think on a supply block, I didn't do, yeah, see on a supply block, you can only create it. You can't do anything else. So this creates really, really nice code, which also comes with the thing you need most is tests. So all the tests are here as well. So you can see it's got all the testing, and it's really cleverly done. Like, again, quite a master, and he's done a really good job here. And this is really nicely done. So I actually relearned how to do Holochain coding again from this application. Actually, and while we're at it, we might as well show. Oh yeah, so there's some really neat things that are not just code, but also how do you do all this stuff? So if you look in the package.json file, it's got a whole bunch of commands on what to actually do. So if I go back to my code, oh, see, it's worked already. So now we've got this app called AMA1. Let's load it up over here. AMA1. Yes. And there you go. There's the UI. There's all your DNA. So we did the zone called zone 0, entry def. There's your entries, right? And that was only a couple of minutes. So it's super fast. Right. So if we go back to the one I'm actually working on, and we'll just stop this. What's really cool now is that you can do, so if I make a change to my code, so you do that, if you spell it correctly, nothing's changed from the build it stuff. It's actually, so there you go, it's built. So any new code that I've done has now been built, and now I can do npm run This will actually start the conductor for you. Yeah, there's my conductor running. And you'll see that there's also all these other nice things in here, which do things like networking. So you can write npm network 3, and the way this is set up, this will actually start 3 conductors, and it will start 3 agents for you and 3 UIs and connect them all together for you. Super easy. So this is light years ahead of where I was writing code. I was actually creating the config files and copying them and then doing all this string passing and stuff to make all these different ones. Don't have to do that now because there's really nice tools like this one. HCDNA pack. And there's a generate one somewhere.
So I guess just to add to what Phil's saying is when we brought them in, there we go. Yeah, when we brought them in, so we had this code base that we did with this university, and a lot of these concepts were pretty primitive and done by hand. And he just came and started using the tools that are now available in Holochain, map them to what we're doing, and there we go. We've got an app.
Amazing.
So I'll let you keep going.
Yeah. Oh, I know, because I was on the wrong one, didn't I? Typical. Hang on 2 seconds.
So while you're doing that, I'll just explain a bit about if people probably, if they've been following Holochain enough, they've heard about RedGrid. What's interesting is we're a commercial company. There's a lot of projects in Holochain, which are really good, but we're actually a for-profit company in RedGrid. And September, we created IOEN, which is a global play, and that's open source. So the relationship between the two is that RedGrid is our first service provider. I've got my IOEN hat on now and my IOEN shirt. And the code that's produced there will get fed up and become open source in some way. That'll get enriched by many other RedGrids around the world, and then they can bring it down. So I see it as a virtuous cycle where commercial companies create things. Yep, thanks Nathan for the URL in the chat. And it goes up, ION curates and apps generalizes, and then it's available to others. And that's how we do it. Also in the energy space, I made a list of all the directions we're in. And we're slightly ahead of everything, which is actually a bit of a problem for a commercial company because, well, we're blue ocean. We're creating all this stuff. Okay, so you're redoing this, Phil?
Yep, 2 secs. So I've got my conductor running now.
Right.
I miss you.
Yeah, so in the energy space, there's something called embedded networks, which is their term in energies, and it's an enclosed, part of the problem is regulations around the world and hooking into national grids, but an embedded network is actually a microgrid that can stand by itself. So you can think about things like shopping centers or universities or campuses or schools that are big enough where energy may come in from outside, but a lot of it more and more can be generated internally. So you have an internal community, and these are happening now. And we'll get Simon to talk a bit about community batteries, because that's something he's been looking at quite a bit. So do you want to talk a bit about that, Sim?
Yeah, are you ready to go, Phil, or do you want me to?
Well, you guys haven't seen this, but this is what I've been working on the last few days. So the
okay,
the conductor's running here, and this is the front end. So so the idea is to have producers and consumers. So we're going to join up as a producer. And because it's all done on postcodes, I've just separated this out, so it's much easier. And you can pick the generation method and go submit. So now we've got a producer. And then if you're a consumer, I'll get a little bit further with this one, same sort of thing. Put your address in. Straight, and then same postcode. And then you go submit. And then what we're going to do next is you'll be able to pick which type of producers in your local area do you want to set up a supply agreement with? Like, is it your local community battery, your neighbour's solar system, or somebody's got wind in the area as well? And then you'll be able to set up the supply agreements like we got up here, and then start supplying power. And because it's me, because it's all, you know, what do you call it, responsive and all that kind of stuff. It looks pretty. Right. So that's as far as we got with the code.
Amazing.
I guess ultimately, if you follow through the message sequence diagram, you as the consumer say, I need energy. Who's going to provide it for me? And it is a market, and everything is configurable. We have this concept of, we call it a micro DAO, but it's basically the DNA, and you can connect to multiple DHTs. So it's the possibilities are a bit mind-boggling actually once you get into it. And of course, as you go across DHTs, you're effectively a firewall. There's all that.
Yeah, and because the price of solar that the feed-in tariff is just steadily on the decline, because all the retailers are like, we don't know what to do with this, we can't. So they're just basically discouraging people from putting solar on their roof. I'm getting 8 cents a kilowatt hour now, right? I can sell that to my neighbour at 47 cents. And he would still be paying 15 cents a kilowatt hour less than the retail price.
Mhm.
Yep.
I think like that, and also like one of the things to extend on is what Phil just showed us as well. Like this is one of the things that it sort of blows my mind, the power of this particular attribute, which is what we did with the university project was very much based on agents interacting with a central market.
Yep.
But there is one market and one entity it's interacting with. But the way that Phil has sort of morphed our thinking and which will be represented in the open source code is that any agent can create a market or participate in multiple markets at once. And that's precisely how energy is evolving, right? With neighborhood battery scenarios, you're sourcing your energy from multiple sources, whether it be your neighbor, whether it be a community battery, whether it be your own battery, whether it be your retailer burning dinosaurs. We can start to create these competitive market systems that each agent can select from and control their own destiny. And like we did there was some profiling done in Melbourne. This is why the battery scenario is really super interesting to us, and applying this code into the community battery scenario is super interesting because we got hold of some stats that were saying in Australia alone, the storage from about 4,800 community batteries is sufficient to replace fossil fuels.
Wow.
That's 4,800. That's 4,800 projects, or that equates to about the storage out of about 240,000 electric vehicles, and there's 20 million electric vehicles registered. There's 20 million vehicles registered in Australia. So if you could get 240k of those, like you can really change the game and really shuffle out this fossil stuff with some of the power of that. So yeah, I think that's just the application of what Phil just showed us is pretty unreal with the agent-based scenario, and you can't really do it with any other technology, I don't believe. So that's pretty cool.
I think if you've been following batteries like I have for decades, it's all just suddenly hitting really fast, and it also is a game changer in energy because solar only shines during the day, but now you've got this store, and they're both producers and consumers in Phil's model. It's pretty exciting, and the actual technologies are changing. If you want to have a look, I'll put it in the chat, but it's called formenergy.com. There's about 6 or 7 billionaires, including Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, that you've heard of. It's out of MIT, and the two ingredients to make up the battery are iron and air. So they're pretty plentiful, pretty exciting. Also, in terms of community battery sim, so I mean, this is something we really want to explore with Phil once he gets this first version out, which is imminent now. And I should also mention, being an open source project, we are going to provide a lot of documentation on Git books, and basically, again, just following what Holochain's done, because at this point, Holochain's got excellent documentation in my mind. And of course, shout out to Guillaume Cordoba, who helped us on the university project, and he just continues to create amazing stuff. I noticed in the package.json, Philip, there's a playground, so that's must be his stuff incorporated in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't actually hooked that up to my front end yet. So
Yeah. And I think like the other cool thing too is like you can like that front end and the code that you just showed us, like we our imagination, our creativity is thinking in terms of the neighborhood battery. So that being a solution to a neighborhood battery scenario, but the awesome thing about it will be the agents and the markets they create can be used by anyone for anything in the model, in the protocol we're releasing. So
yeah,
all sorts of
so
creative
powerful.
people around the world can apply it to their own realm and their own environment, which is super cool.
We have a friend that came to that gathering in Queensland a few years ago, who's into oysters, and I've been talking to him quite a bit, and it's the same model. He's talking about trading and things. So yeah, it's all the same stuff once you take a step back.
Yeah, you're basically talking about a local trading and distribution model.
That's it. Yeah.
Local groups.
Well, the other thing too, David, is you can like set up. You can use that model of multiple markets and trading with multiple entities to create a kind of class of service of energy, I suppose, for your own devices and your own home. Like Phil will be able to set it up in such a way that it procures energy from his local battery first, the neighborhood battery second, his solar is used internally first, and then donated to the grandma across the road or whoever he just wishes it to go to, you know. So you can start to set up these personal preferences for how your energy is used. So it sort of blows my mind a bit, but
I totally get it, actually, because I'm trying to do solar here, and like it's exactly the same. The grid technology is not good enough, and they're basically disincentivizing. They're charging me to put it into the grid, which is exactly what you talked about. But hang on a second, there's all this additional demand for solar that exists in my amongst my neighbors. So if we're creating a microgrid and just distributing to each other, and because the price is going to double here again, I think in a month's time, then suddenly the differential between like what I'm being charged and what I would be charged to put into the grid, given, as you say, the improvement in generation and then storage that's accelerating dramatically. It's a complete no-brainer as a market. And I think that's what I was trying to say to the people who are worried about ION or whatever, because they're looking at the price. And so hopefully some of them are on here and watching this. Like, this is just like, think about the extraordinary opportunity when we're sitting in a market where, we're decentralized generation, you're being charged to generate. You have to use all your generation in your location, because otherwise it's never going to pay back. And the cost that people are that incurred to buy it from the centralized providers, like, that's just, the market opportunity is absolutely massive. And look at the tech we've just seen. And then the next thing, just I think for people that are watching out there, like, there's no one else pushing in this direction with this tech in this way. So
I also think that there's new batteries that are available that are much, much cheaper than they have been, means that people who aren't able to generate power for whatever reason can just stick a big old battery in their house.
Yep.
And then I'll sell them power during the day. I'll fill up the battery for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
The price of batteries this century has dropped 98%. So it's just plummeting, as are solar panels. And this whole pattern, we've seen it before, not just in energy, but in telephones. So back in the old days, same thing. Here in Australia, we had something called the bush telegraph, where farmers were just fed up and they actually ran telephone signals through barbed wire.
Yeah.
So they did it themselves. They self-organized.
Yep. Interesting. Super cool. Okay, so we've covered batteries, we've covered protocol, and we're going to cover the university stuff a little bit.
Yeah,
is that right?
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, sure.
I'll start, Sim, and then we can lead. Yeah. So if you search, so the company you did was RedGrid, because ION's brand new. It's only 3 months. But if you search Google Holochain and RedGrid, you'll find an article that Paul Doust wrote, and he wrote it as a hero story, which is a bit silly, but we went way back with Holochain. This was like a couple of years ago, and we were trying to do performance because we wanted to show it was just fantastic. The university is a smart city, and they had this playground which this tiny little startup was invited to use, and that includes buildings, residents, wind tunnels, everything you can think of. Our code was meant to fit in an IoT device that was provided by a company in Spain, and it literally is a Docker container amongst the other 3, which included a market, an agent, and power quality, a meter, basically. So Simla can expand on this, but they still had this centralized mentality where the big brains were creating these algorithms for what's called the flexibility market, which is just the gap. So you look ahead in the future and say, yeah, I can provide energy. In current world, it's 24 hours, which is like, that's a long time, especially when extreme weather events are happening, for 5-minute increments. So Sim, do you want to expand on that and where we went to?
Well, it was quite a funny story with that project, because we sort of got, it's such a hard thing with the agent-based approach. It sort of flips your mindset. You have to sort of I think Mike says it all the time, that you have to sort of unlearn everything you already had. And I think even ourselves, with some of the directions and some of the decisions we're sort of going back to the old, though. And actually we had Art Brock came and had a bit of a counselling call with us around that project, and the gist of it was basically, no, it's agent based. You can do so much more opportunity if you do it in a different way. And sort of Mike and I stepped away from that, and I was like, oh well, yeah, damn it, he's right. We've got to. There's a lot of potential here. So. But yeah, so we got to a point, and we did, like, the performance testing was really interesting in that project. That university has just an enormous amount of compute power at its disposal that we could sort of do some testing and performance testing really good. We didn't quite get our hands on the Ferrari of it all to test it properly, but we got some pretty good results. But now, even since then, Holochain has just performance-wise come in leaps and bounds. And I was saying to Mike at the time, I really want us to be able to beat the Visa network in terms of transactions per second, just as a demonstration, even though transactions per second don't apply in like an agent base. So I just wanted to prove that, and I think we could quite easily do that now. And but just on the collaboration with the university for the protocol and the launch and the the things that we've been working on. So they've been really super supportive in helping us get to this point, and they're going to partner in some of the releases, and that's going to be the other part to that is we'll do some engagement with the students and researchers out there as well to educate them in what this protocol can do and how it works, and start using and abusing the protocol that we release and developing it further. So that's just massive for us, because we can have all these great minds in energy, and they're a UN award-winning entity, so that in energy, so they're like all the thought leaders in this space. So that's a huge boon for us, and this upcoming announcement, I guess.
Yeah, amazing. Well, that one feels like it'll be cool to get on when you can share a little bit more again.
Yeah, it's a bit. I'm not allowed to name them yet, so it's a big organization, so we're not allowed to. It has to go through the rigmarole. But
do you have any idea when you'll be able to name it?
I think probably in the next few days. I would almost imagine. Cool. It's very, very imminent. Yeah, we're we're just not allowed to say it just yet.
No,
we can tell
that's cool.
No.
Let's because what I'm thinking is, again, that might be something that, because when we name them, we could also look through. Maybe we could do the same thing and look at the code a little bit and understand a little bit more what's working, how it's working, all those things. Is that right? Or like we could go a little bit deeper into it. That'd be pretty sweet if we jumped on in a couple of weeks.
I think so. Yeah, like Phil and I have briefly spoken as well about we'll be getting some sessions ready for presenting to them and with them as well. So by all means, I think that would be good. We'll do that for sure. We also
have this whole plan, and you can see it in our roadmap, where we plan to have dev camps just like Holochain did. I think I mentioned before the call that I was on the first 3 dev camps. I think the first one had 12 people, and 7 of them were from Holochain. And I know your last one had something like 1,500 people. So I really agree on that. And Phil was instrumental in teaching me. I think it was the first 3. You were on all 3. I think that really works in that environment is games. Games really good because and in our case, you could see what Phil's done. You could already set up a simulation where you've got a little market of energy. Yeah. Simon and I, Sim actually coined the term Internet of Energy, and where he was coming from, we've written a Medium article on it. But if you think about the internet in the 80s and 90s, they had this concept, well, they still do, it's RPCs, RFCs, requests for comments, and anyone can write anything. And then if people find it useful, they'll adopt it. So that's the sort of ethos we want to present. Sim had this idea of using a Raspberry Pi and then lighting up a lamp. So accepting signals from the weather, there's what's called a spot price in a national energy market, all these factors that come in, make a decision, and then turn an LED on your Raspberry Pi. So that's a very, very simple open source starting point.
Yeah, games are fantastic. Games are fantastic for opening people's minds. Well, let's do that because I'm conscious of time. But I would be once that announcement's made, I'd love to come back on in a couple of weeks and go through that in more detail. And then it sounds like also as the protocol gets launched and starts to get used and torn apart, it's just like the new Build It, Phil. I've missed you so much.
That's what I was saying. The whole thing about my solar was done. I was like, oh, I could do with getting a job again.
No, well, because I pinged the guys as well. I think at the start of the year, I was like, "Should we do Build It again?" But now it's like this isn't an abstraction, is it? We're not like profiling dev tooling for devs to show how cool. Like this is just really important stuff.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually going to be using the tools I built
Of course.
to build this, because there's like 50 different components to this, right?
Yeah.
So the ability to have, and that's a nice way to get the community going too. Like, instead of just having the npm init holochain and having that thing, we can actually do similar things for ION and go, right, here you go, here's all the tools you want to build. You've got an idea for a game on your local battery. You can build all those things. But yeah, so all that stuff I did with you during the build it stuff, I'm definitely going to be bringing that up to scratch.
Yeah. I'm just
going to jump in, try to cut the glare, but what you're looking at there is what's called a smart plug. And this is what we've based some of our, we do a lot of work in property development as well. So you can basically plug something in. That's a weird Australian connector there, but it's got a Wi-Fi interface and an agent associated with it. So we are behind the meter. There's a lot of work that's being done at the meter of your house, but we actually are at the atomic level. And this term that's I find really exciting, which is node-to-node cooperation. So if there's some, I don't know where you are in the world, but in Australia it's getting pretty warm these days. And we had, I think it was 2 years ago, we had a blackout just for a brief period of time. If we can get organized and avoid a blackout, it's actually a really good idea. And the national energy operator actually rewards that sort of thing to the retailers, but we'd be assisting them there. So there's real use cases to how Holochain is going to be used in the physical world.
Yep. Amazing. Guys, I'm just actually pinging people on Telegram, telling them how excited I am. It's just so cool. It's so cool. Yeah. Another thing is just plugging away. Like, I don't know, there's so much coming up to me at the moment around like just to support people, like, and just how exciting it is to see people have been plugging away with this tech stack and everything else over the years, and suddenly things start to materialize. And then the coolest thing is that it's not just what you thought, it's what you thought and so much more.
Absolutely. Yeah. I can't get over that. Basically, there's a weekly release now of Holochain. And when we took the university code, I actually took it and ran it, and it basically compiled, like, everything sort of worked. I mean, there was a few failed tests, and then Phil's been, taking it way beyond that. So yeah, so good.
Amazing. Guys, total pleasure. Well, yeah, once the announcement's out, let's just schedule again and yeah, just get the story out there, the use cases out there, and change the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we won't. We're sort of closing up, but on a closing note, we are dealing with microgrids around the world. So there'll be some announcements in Central Africa, in Bangladesh, in West Africa. So these are ones that, we're working with these people.
So cool. Mike, Sim, Phil, total pleasure. Amazing work, guys. Inspiration.
Great seeing you again.
David.
And yeah, thanks for Holochain for hosting us. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys, putting this together.
Very good.
See you later.
Bye.